Blindfolded, she kissed him believing he was the prince, but he was the Alpha King who held her forever. The night air in Eldrin was thick with the scent of jasmine and burning candles. The moon hung low, a silver witness over the vast castle gardens where lanterns flickered like fireflies caught in a dream. Lady Seraphine moved among the crowd of nobles with quiet grace, her mind dancing between boredom and longing. Though she was promised to a prince of a distant kingdom, her heart felt restless, aching for something she could not name. The masked ball had begun hours ago, its hall echoing with laughter, music, and whispers. Inspiration. Golden chandeliers cast their glow on flowing gowns and polished boots. Seraphine's eyes wandered, watching the court perform its polished dance of smiles, bows, and politeness. Nothing stirred her interest until she saw him. He stood at the far end of the hall, masked, draped in black velvet embroidered with silver threads that caught the candlelight. Inspiration. There was something in the way he carried himself, tall, still, with an aura that pulled the gaze of all who dared look.
He did not bow or speak. He simply watched.
Inspiration. And when his dark eyes, framed by the mask, met hers, her breath hitched. She should have felt fear. Nobles whispered about the stranger. Rumors of a shadowy figure appearing at courts across the lands. Some called him a prince, some a wanderer. Some even whispered darker names she did not dare repeat aloud. Yet, standing there, under the moonlit chandelier, Seraphine felt a strange courage bloom inside her. Drawn by something she could not explain, she allowed the stranger to approach. Inspiration. His steps were silent, almost ghost-like, as though he moved through the air rather than across the floor. "Good evening, my lady," he said, his voice low and velvety, sending shivers down her spine. Inspiration. "May I have this dance?" The customs of her court dictated caution, yet the pull she felt was irresistible. With a small nod, she placed her hand in his. The music began anew, slow and haunting, like a melody written for moonlight and shadows. As they moved together across the floor, she felt the world shrink, leaving only him and the warmth of his hand in hers. Inspiration. She laughed softly, a sound that made the stranger tilt his head, intrigued. "Are you from the prince's court?" she asked, curiosity slipping past caution. He only smiled behind his mask. There was no answer, only a promise in the curve of his lips that stirred something deep inside her, a mixture of excitement and fear. Inspiration. At a sudden impulse, Seraphine suggested, "Close your eyes and let me lead you outside. The gardens are magist." Inspiration. He trusted her entirely, or so it seemed. She guided him through the heavy doors into the moonlit gardens, where lanterns hung from trees like frozen stars. The night was alive with the scent of roses and the soft rustle of leaves. "Now," she whispered, "I want you to close your eyes completely."
He obeyed, and the darkness seemed to stretch between them, intimate and trembling.
Seraphine felt her pulse quicken. The world had narrowed to a single moment, a single breath. She lifted her hand to his cheek, imagining she held the prince, imagining this stolen moment could be hers alone, and then, with a courage she did not know she possessed, she kissed him. It was soft at first, hesitant, filled with the uncertainty of stolen secrets. But the stranger's hand came to her waist, steadying, holding, grounding her in a warmth that was unfamiliar yet undeniable. Her heart pounded, echoing in her ears like distant drums of fate. The kiss broke briefly, only for her to murmur, "I thought you were the prince." He chuckled softly, a sound like rolling thunder muted by velvet. Not every prince wears gold and silk, he said. She laughed, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. Then who are you? He did not answer. He merely took her hand and led her further into the shadows, into a quiet glade where the moonlight spilled silver across the grass. She felt alive in a way she had never known, the night weaving magic around them like an unseen spell. But as she pulled back, she caught a glint under the mask, a flash of something cold, commanding, terrifying. Breaths. Her heart stumbled. "Aye," she began, but words failed her. The stranger removed his mask with a slow, deliberate motion. The face beneath was not the prince she had expected. Bray. Not at all. Alaric. Beration. She had heard whispers of him, of course. The Alpha King who ruled the hidden forests, a man of shadow and storm. Legends called him merciless, powerful, untouchable. Beration. And yet here he stood, only a step away, the night making his dark eyes shine like molten silver.
Her breath caught.
Bray.
You're not. No, he interrupted softly, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips.
Beration. The weight of the truth crashed over her like cold water. She had kissed the man who haunted the dreams and fears of kingdoms. The man whispered about in legends, who could command loyalty, fear, and obedience with a single glance.
And yet there was a softness in his eyes now, a flicker of something more human.
"You've marked me," she said suddenly, noticing a faint silver glow on her wrist. The mark shimmered where his hand had brushed hers, a lingering trace of the kiss, a connection she did not understand. Alaric's eyes softened, though the shadow of his power never left them. "It is no ordinary mark," he said quietly.
It binds fate. It will not let us forget each other.
Breath. Seraphine stepped back instinctively, her heart pounding. I must return. They will wonder where I am. Beration. He inclined his head, a gesture both respectful and commanding.
You will return, he said.
Beration. But know this, I will watch, always. The night has heard your heart, Lady Seraphine. Beration. And I am not one to forget. Her mind reeled as she fled the glade, the silver mark glowing faintly under her sleeve. She did not look back, but she could feel him there like a shadow tethered to her very breath. Back in her chambers, she tried to convince herself it was nothing more than a mistake, a fleeting moment of daring that should not have happened. Beration. Yet her thoughts returned again and again to the forest, the lanterns and the dark, compelling eyes that had held her so completely in that stolen kiss. The moon drifted behind clouds, leaving the night darker and colder. But Seraphine felt a strange warmth pulsing in her veins, a warning and a promise entwined. Somewhere, in the shadows beyond the walls, Alaric watched the castle with a patience born of centuries. He did not move, did not speak, but the faintest hint of a smile crossed his lips. He had planted a seed, a mark, a bond, a claim that time and fate could not undo. Beration.
And he would wait. Always.
Brace. The night seemed to hold its breath, as if the world itself sensed the beginning of something that would change kingdoms, hearts, and destinies forever. Days passed since the masked ball, yet Lady Seraphine could not erase the memory of the man in black velvet from her mind. Beration. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw the silver glow of the mark on her wrist and felt the weight of those dark, compelling eyes. The mark pulsed faintly, as if reminding her that their fates were entwined in ways she did not yet understand. At court, the palace bustled with preparations for the prince's arrival. Messages flew between kingdoms, couriers racing on horseback with news of alliances, treaties, and threats. Seraphine moved among the nobles with practiced grace, hiding the whirlwind of her thoughts behind polite smiles. She spoke of flowers and fabrics, of dances and feasts, while her mind wandered to the shadowy forest beyond the castle walls. The rumors of the Alpha King grew louder with each passing day. Nobles whispered of a dark figure seen at the edge of the forest, of villages visited and yet untouched, of a king who was said to command storms and shadows alike. Most regarded him with fear, some with awe. Seraphine's heart, however, felt an inexplicable pull toward him, a mixture of curiosity, longing, and something like destiny. One evening, unable to resist the pull any longer, she slipped from the palace through a side gate, carrying only a lantern and her courage. The gardens were silent under the moon, the lantern casting golden circles on the cobblestones. Her steps were careful, but her heart raced, knowing she was stepping into danger, yet drawn irresistibly to the forest beyond. As she reached the edge of the trees, a sudden rustle made her stop. From the shadows, a figure emerged. Bert, tall, cloaked in black, moving with the silent grace of a shadow, he stepped into the lantern's glow. "Alaric," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Brr." He inclined his head slightly, as if greeting an old friend and a stranger at the same time.
"You should not have come here, Lady Seraphine," he said softly, yet his voice carried a weight that made her shiver.
The forest is not safe for the untrained. It hides secrets and dangers that few survive. Beration. I had to see you, she admitted, stepping closer despite the fear prickling at the edges of her courage. I cannot forget the night, the kiss. Beration. The mark. Alaric's dark eyes softened, though the shadow of power never left them. He extended a hand, silent, patient. Then you have felt it as I have. The bond we share cannot be ignored. She hesitated, staring at his outstretched hand. It was both an invitation and a warning. Finally she took it. In that moment, the forest seemed to hold its breath, the moonlight spilling silver over them as though blessing the connection that had begun in the ballroom. Brrr. You are brave or foolish, he said, his lips curving into a shadow of a smile. Few would step willingly into the unknown for curiosity alone. Perhaps, she admitted, her eyes meeting his. But I feel drawn.
As if I am meant to know you. As if something is pulling us together.
Breath. Alaric's gaze lingered on her, intense and unreadable. It is not mere chance, Lady Seraphine. Beration.
You have been touched by a force older than kingdoms. The kiss you gave.
Bear, it has bound you to me, and me to you. Fate moves in quiet, unrelenting ways. But it has been. Brr. The words made her shiver. She wanted to pull back, to return to the safety of the castle, yet every instinct in her body urged her to stay. The forest seemed alive, whispering her name, urging her forward. For hours they walked among the trees, speaking in hushed tones. Brr. Seraphine learned fragments of Alaric's world, the hidden kingdom of the forests, the burdens he bore as Alpha King, the centuries of solitude that shaped his power. He spoke not of cruelty but of responsibility, of choices made in the shadows to protect his people. Beration. And you, he said finally, his voice softer, almost vulnerable, have the courage to step into a world you do not understand. That courage. It draws me. Seraphine's heart quickened. Beration. The words were not promises of love nor declarations of possession. They were acknowledgments of something deeper, something neither of them could fully control. But fate was not idle.
As they spoke, distant cries echoed through the forest, shouts of alarm and panic from the direction of Eldrin. Seraphine's heart leapt to her chest.
"The castle!" she exclaimed. "Something is happening." Alaric's eyes darkened. "Stay close," he ordered, and in a single motion he moved with a speed and grace that seemed to defy the laws of men. He led her through hidden paths and secret clearings, keeping her shielded from the world. When they finally reached the edge of the forest, the sight before them made Seraphine's blood run cold. A rival faction, masked and armed, had breached the outer walls of Eldrin. Torches burned, soldiers shouted, and the air was thick with smoke and fear.
"Go back," Alaric said, his voice calm but deadly. "You do not belong in this battle." "I cannot," she said, gripping his arm.
"The prince, my family." Alaric's hand rested on her shoulder, firm and grounding. "I will protect you. You are not alone." Before she could protest, the attackers noticed their presence. Alaric's movements became a blur, silent, precise, and overwhelming. Shadows seemed to bend around him, his power radiating like a storm ready to break. Seraphine watched, heart hammering, as he protected her and pushed back the intruders with a strength that felt almost supernatural. When the chaos finally ended, Alaric turned to her. His cloak was dusted with ash, his eyes still burning with intensity. "You see now," he said softly, "why I cannot be ignored. My world is not kind to those who wander unprepared." Seraphine swallowed, her pulse racing. I am safe with you," she whispered, realizing the truth of her own words. Alaric's gaze softened, and for the first time he allowed the faintest smile. "And I am bound to you."
That mark you bear is more than a sign. It is a promise, though neither of us may yet understand its full meaning.
As they returned to the forest, moving silently beneath the trees, Seraphine felt a strange mixture of fear and exhilaration. She knew she had stepped into a world larger, darker, and more dangerous than anything the palace could offer. And yet she could not turn back. The bond was alive within her, pulsing with the night itself. But fate, as always, was cruel and patient. When they reached a quiet glade, Alaric halted and turned to her.
"There is more you must know," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of centuries. "The bond we share,
It carries danger."
A prophecy whispers that only one of us may survive the coming eclipse.
Then, the event will test not just our strength but our hearts, and the choices we make will shake kingdoms.
Seraphine's breath caught.
An eclipse!
What does it mean? It means, Alaric said, his dark eyes locking onto hers, that our fates are intertwined and the world will demand a sacrifice from one of us. Perhaps more than one. And yet, even then, I will not let you face it alone.
She wanted to ask more, to demand clarity, but the forest around them seemed to tense, as if listening. The wind rustled through the branches like whispered warnings.
Desperation realized she had stepped fully into Alaric's world, a world of power, shadow, and unrelenting destiny. And as the first stars of night flickered in the darkening sky, she felt it again, the pull of the mark, faint but insistent, as if urging her forward, binding her to a path she could not yet see.
Alaric stepped closer, his presence overwhelming yet protective.
Rest now, he said. The night is long, and the dangers ahead are greater than you imagine. But remember, I am bound to you, as you are to me.
Fate has chosen us. Seraphine nodded, unsure whether she felt fear, excitement, or a strange mixture of both.
She realized with a shiver of understanding that the kiss in the ballroom was only the beginning. Their journey had begun, and neither would remain untouched by the darkness or the promise of the other. As she lay in her chamber that night, staring at the ceiling, the glow of the mark beneath her sleeve seemed brighter than ever. Verse 8. Outside, in the forest beyond Eldrin, Alaric watched from the shadows. His eyes were fixed on the castle, on her, on the path fate had woven. He did not move, did not sleep. He merely waited, patient and unyielding, for the time when their bond would be tested, their hearts challenged, and the true story of their fate would begin. And the wind whispered through the trees like a warning. The world had changed, and neither kingdoms nor hearts would remain the same. The sun rose over Eldrin, painting the castle walls with golden light, but Seraphine felt none of its warmth. The news of intruders at the eastern border had left the court in a state of panic. Soldiers moved with tense precision. Commanders barked orders, and the air hummed with unease. Yet her thoughts were not on the castle's defenses or the prince awaiting her hand.
They were on him, Alaric, the Alpha King, whose shadow now stretched across her life like a storm cloud she could not escape.
She could not stop thinking about the pull of the mark on her wrist, its faint warmth and subtle glow reminding her of the forest, of moonlight, of the stolen kiss that had changed everything. Every time she touched it, she felt a thread pulling her outward, drawing her toward the unknown, toward him. In the afternoon, unable to endure the tension any longer, she slipped again into the gardens. But she hoped silently that she would find him. Even though fear whispered that it was reckless, she could not resist. Her heart had claimed him long before her mind had understood the danger. As she neared the edge of the forest, a figure emerged from the shadows with the grace of the night itself.
Alaric. He was even more imposing in the sunlight, his black cloak flowing like liquid shadow, his presence commanding yet calm.
His eyes met hers, dark and unreadable, and a shiver ran down her spine.
You should not have come alone, he said, his voice quiet but edged with the authority of a king. I cannot stay behind, Seraphine replied, stepping closer despite the fear curling in her chest. You saved me! The castle is not safe!
And I cannot ignore the bond we share. Alaric's expression softened, though the tension in his jaw remained.
The bond, yes, but bonds do not make one immune to danger.
You walk in a world you barely understand, and yet I am not sure I wish you to stay behind.
Seraphine felt her heart flutter at his words. There was danger in them, but also a promise, an unspoken acknowledgement that her presence mattered to him.
Something in the depth of his gaze made her feel both protected and exposed, like standing at the edge of a cliff with wind rushing around her. Before she could respond, a sharp cry broke the quiet of the forest. A figure staggered from the trees, a young messenger from the castle, pale and terrified.
Lady Seraphine!
Brass.
Alpha King! The intruders! They've captured a section of the Eastern Guard!
They're moving toward the inner walls. Alaric's eyes narrowed, dark as midnight clouds. Stay behind me, he said, his voice low and dangerous. The words carried weight, commanding obedience. Yet beneath them lay an unspoken promise. He would protect her, whatever the cost. The forest seemed to pulse around them as Alaric moved forward, steps silent but purposeful, guiding Seraphine along hidden paths known only to him. She felt both exhilaration and fear.
knowing that each step deeper into the shadows carried them closer to danger and closer to him. They emerged near the castle's eastern wall just as the attackers launched another push. Chaos erupted, soldiers shouted, arrows flew, and the clash of steel rang through the air. Seraphine froze, her hand instinctively brushing the mark on her wrist, burning. Its glow was stronger now, responding to the tension, the danger, the presence of Alaric. Without warning, Alaric stepped forward. The air around him seemed to bend, shadows twisting in obedience to his will. In a series of movements that seemed almost impossible for a man, he disarmed the intruders, pushing them back with strength and precision that left Seraphine awestruck. Every motion was fluid, commanding, yet careful to protect her. "You see, now," he said, turning to her with dark intensity, "why I cannot be ignored." My kingdom exists in the shadows because the world fears what it does not understand. And yet, for you, I would step into the light. Seraphine's breath caught. There was power in his words, but also something she had not expected. Vulnerability. A rare flicker of human emotion beneath the mask of the Alpha King. It pulled at her heart with a force she could not resist. When the intruders finally retreated, Alaric guided her away from the walls, back into the quiet of the forest. There, under the ancient trees, the chaos of the castle seemed distant, replaced by the soft rustle of leaves and the silver glow of moonlight.
"You could have been hurt," Alaric said, voice low.
"And yet you follow. Why?" Seraphine met his gaze, steady despite the fluttering of her heart. "Because I feel drawn to you. Because I cannot ignore what the mark has done, or what I feel when I am near you. I do not know what it is, but I know I cannot run from it."
Alaric studied her silently, the shadows of the trees falling across his face. "You speak of courage and foolishness in the same breath."
It is rare to find one who walks willingly into the unknown, especially one who carries both heart and mind as you do. For a long moment, neither spoke.
The forest seemed to hold its breath, watching them, as if it knew that the bond between them was more than chance. The faint glow of the mark pulsed again, stronger now, linking them in a way neither fully understood. Finally, Alaric stepped closer, his hand brushing against hers, not in command, but in gentle connection.
"There is much you do not know," he said, "about me, about my kingdom, about the forces gathering beyond these walls."
And yet, even if danger lies ahead, you are bound to me as I am bound to you.
Her pulse quickened at the words. It was not a declaration of love, nor a promise of safety.
It was something deeper, an acknowledgement of connection, of destiny, of a path neither could escape.
"Then I will follow," she whispered, her voice trembling.
"Even if it means walking into danger." Alaric's eyes softened. "Then you must trust me. Trust that I will not let the world take you from me." And for the first time, Seraphine felt the weight of his true power, not in the strength of his arms or the shadows he commanded, but in the care and intensity of his gaze. But fate is never idle. The quiet of the forest was shattered by a sudden chilling sound, the faint, eerie cry of creatures from the deep woods, shadows moving unnaturally among the trees. Seraphine's breath hitched. What is that?" Alaric's expression darkened. "The forests guard themselves," he said grimly. "And sometimes what lies within is not meant to be seen. We must move."
He took her hand firmly, and together they ran through the hidden paths, guided by the pull of the mark and Alaric's intimate knowledge of the forest. The shadows seemed to twist around them, alive with unseen eyes. Breaths. Seraphine clung to him, not out of fear alone, but because she felt the strength, the protection, and the growing bond that tethered their fates. Finally, they reached a clearing where the moonlight spilled like silver upon the grass.
Alaric turned to her, eyes dark and unreadable.
He glances around in desperation. You see now, he said quietly, that the world beyond Eldrin is far greater, far darker, and far more dangerous than the palace walls could ever suggest. And yet, it is also a world where you and I are connected, bound by fate and the mark you bear. Seraphine nodded, still catching her breath. The reality of the danger, the power, and the bond pressed down on her chest, heavy and exhilarating all at once. She realized then that her life had changed irrevocably. She could no longer return to the life of polite dances, whispered conversations, and safe courtyards. She was bound to Alaric, and in him she had glimpsed a world of shadow and fire, of power and passion, of destiny she could neither control nor escape. Alaric stepped closer, the distance between them charged with tension. The prophecy. It approaches, he said softly. The eclipse is near, and with it comes challenges that will test not only our strength, but the truth of our bond. You must be ready, Seraphine. And you must know.
I will not allow you to face it alone.
Heart. I do not know if I am ready, she admitted. But I will stand with you. I must. He reached out, brushing a lock of hair from her face, and for the briefest moment the forest seemed still, the shadows holding their breath. Then we will face it together, he said, his voice low, steady, filled with unspoken promise, no matter what comes. But even as they stood there, united in a fragile understanding, the darkness of the forest shifted. Hidden eyes watched from the shadows. The intruders from the eastern border were only the beginning. Forces, older, darker, and more dangerous than either of them stirred in the lands beyond Eldrin. And the mark on Seraphine's wrist pulsed again, bright and insistent, as if whispering that their journey had only just begun. The sky over Eldrin darkened as the eclipse began. A shadow slowly swallowed the sun, painting the world in a strange twilight that was neither night nor day. The wind whispered through the castle towers and the ancient forest beyond, carrying an unease that pressed on every soul. Even the trees seemed to lean closer, their leaves rustling as if warning of unseen dangers. Lady Seraphine stood at the castle walls, her hand brushing the glowing mark on her wrist.
It pulsed softly, almost like a heartbeat, as if reminding her that her destiny was bound to Alaric and to the forces stirring beyond the kingdom. Fear and excitement battled within her, but she drew strength from the knowledge that she was not alone.
Alaric emerged from the forest, tall, cloaked in black, his eyes reflecting the silver eclipse. He had been waiting, watching, guarding, a silent shadow in the approaching twilight. His presence was both a comfort and a storm. Seraphine felt her pulse quicken at the sight of him, the pull of the bond between them stronger than ever. The eclipse begins, he said quietly, his voice deep and steady. This is the moment the prophecy speaks of. Forces older than kingdoms awaken tonight. We will face them together. Seraphine nodded, gripping his hand. The warmth of his touch was grounding, yet thrilling, a tether to safety in a world that seemed suddenly fragile and strange. I am ready, she whispered, though her heart raced. With you, I am ready. Then we must move. The darkness approaches, and it will test both our strength and our hearts. But I will not let you face it alone.
They moved together through the forest, the shadows bending around Alaric as if recognizing his command. Operation. The creatures of the woods stirred, unseen eyes watching their passage. Some whispered in the language of the old magic, a language that only the Alpha King could understand. Operation. Seraphine followed, trust and fear intertwined, feeling the pulse of the mark on her wrist guiding her, pulling her toward the place where destiny waited. At the center of a clearing, the moon and sun aligned perfectly, casting a silver beam that cut through the gloom like a sword. There, standing in the light, were the forces that had haunted Eldrin, creatures of shadow and elemental magic, ancient as the forests themselves. They circled, murmuring in voices like wind and water, waiting to test the bond between Seraphine and Alaric. "You must stand together," Alaric said, voice firm. "The bond between us will protect you." Inspiration. It is stronger than fear, stronger than darkness. Trust it. Trust each other. Seraphine felt a surge of courage. She looked into his eyes, finding in them the same pull she had felt from the first moment they met, the mix of danger, protection, and something deeper she could not yet name. "I trust you," she said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her chest. The shadows advanced. Alaric moved like a storm unleashed, weaving between the creatures with power and precision that seemed impossible for a single man. Seraphine's pulse raced, but she did not flee. She could feel the mark pulsing, drawing strength from Alaric, from the bond between them, from the courage that had grown inside her. One of the shadow creatures lunged toward her, and instinctively she raised her hand. Brrr. A flash of light burst from the mark, bright and pure, striking the creature and sending it reeling. Alaric's eyes widened, just slightly, at the realization that the bond had awakened a power in her, one that could match his own. Inspiration. "You are stronger than you know," he said, his voice almost a whisper as he deflected another attack. "The bond is not just mine." Inspiration.
It is ours. Seraphine felt a surge of determination.
With Alaric at her side, she moved with the shadows, the pulses of the mark guiding her, her heart beating in rhythm with his. Together, they became a force that even the ancient darkness could not easily resist. Parade. As the eclipse reached its peak, the shadows converged into a single massive form, a creature older than memory, its eyes like molten silver, its roar shaking the ground. Seraphine felt fear grip her chest, but she did not falter. Brain. Alaric stood before her, a wall of strength and shadow, and in his eyes she saw the promise of protection, the warmth of care, and the intensity of a bond forged by fate. "Together," he said, and she nodded. They raised their hands, and the mark pulsed, shining brighter than the eclipse itself. A beam of silver light erupted, surrounding them, intertwining their strengths, their courage, their hearts. The shadow creature faltered, its roar breaking into a scream that echoed across the forest. Seraphine realized then that the power was not just in the mark, nor in Alaric, nor in the prophecy, inspiration. The power was in the connection between them, in trust, in courage, in the willingness to face darkness together. The creature lunged one final time, and in perfect unison, Seraphine and Alaric released the light of their bond. The shadow shattered, dissolving into mist that drifted into the air like smoke on the wind. The forest fell silent. Inspiration. Even the trees seemed to breathe, settling after the chaos. Alaric lowered his hand, looking at her with awe, and something deeper. Almost vulnerable. You were magnificent, he said softly. Stronger than I could have imagined. You have awakened a power that no one has seen for centuries. Seraphine felt her chest rise and fall, her hands trembling. She began, but he placed a finger gently against her lips.
You do not need words, he said. It is enough that we survived, that we faced the prophecy, that we did it together.
Her eyes met his, dark and intense, yet soft, filled with gratitude, awe, and something more. A recognition of the bond that had begun with a single, mistaken kiss in the ballroom months ago. For a moment the world was still. The eclipse passed, and sunlight returned, spilling gold across the clearing. Seraphine felt warmth on her skin and in her heart, knowing that the shadows had been defeated, that the bond was stronger than any prophecy, any curse, any fear. Ray. Alaric stepped closer, the weight of centuries in his gaze, yet a gentleness she had not expected in his touch.
Seraphine, he said, voice low, you chose to follow me into the unknown.
You faced fear, danger, and yourself. You have earned more than words can say, and more than I could have hoped to give. Inspiration.
Seraphine's breath caught.
Inspiration.
I chose because I trusted you. Because I believe in us.
Inspiration. He reached for her hand, holding it as though it were the most precious thing in existence.
Then we have found something rare, something eternal.
Inspiration.
Not just strength or power or duty, but a bond that cannot be broken, a trust that cannot falter. The world seemed to hold its breath as they stood together in the clearing, hands intertwined, the mark on her wrist glowing softly, a silent testament to the bond that had guided them, protected them, and united them.
Inspiration. Alaric, she whispered, stepping closer. What happens now?
Hey!
Dark and tender all at once. Now, we face the future. Together. Whatever comes, whatever challenges rise, whatever darkness lurks, we will meet it as one. You are bound to me, as I am bound to you. He glances around in desperation. That is our strength. That is our story. Seraphine felt tears prick her eyes, not of fear, not of sadness, but of release and understanding. The weight of uncertainty, of fear, of longing, had lifted her. She stepped into his arms, feeling the warmth and protection she had longed for, the intensity of his presence grounding her in a way she had never known. Alaric's hand cradled her face, and their eyes met in the silver light of the post-eclipse sky. Slowly, deliberately, they leaned closer, and when their lips met, it was not a stolen kiss, nor a fleeting mistake.
It was a choice.
A promise, a culmination of fear, courage, and destiny. The forest around them seemed to sigh, the sunlight spilling over leaves and grass, the birds beginning to sing once more. Even the shadows seemed to retreat, acknowledging the bond that had triumphed over prophecy, darkness, and fear.
As they pulled back slightly, foreheads resting together, Alaric whispered, "This is only the beginning. Our kingdoms, our lives, our hearts, they will face trials.
But we will face them together." Seraphine nodded, feeling the truth of the words deep in her soul. Always, she whispered. Together. Always. For the first time, the world felt whole, yet alive with possibilities. The shadows were not gone. They never truly disappear, but they were no longer threats that could sever what had been bound. The bond between them, forged in moonlight, shadow, and the courage of hearts willing to trust, would endure.
and as they walked back toward Eldrin hand in hand, the castle bathed in the light of a new day. The story of the Alpha King and the lady bound by fate felt complete, yet timeless, like a song sung by the winds, the trees, and the stars themselves. Inspiration. The kingdoms would know peace, the prophecy fulfilled, the bond eternal. And somewhere in the forests and skies beyond, shadows watched and whispered, knowing that love, courage, and choice could triumph over even the oldest of darkness.